Hi, Matthew.
Hi, Councillor Porter. How are you? All right.
Fine, thank you. I'm just checking that I'm on because I've got one additional and one formal meeting, and I thought I'd just check.
Right. Okay. No problem. No problem.
Right. Okay, that's fine. Whoops. Off the thing. Okay. I'm here.
Okay. Great stuff. Okay. I'll
Switch everything off. I'm here. Just so you know.
Yeah. No problem. Talk to you soon. Thanks.
I'm in the right place. Good evening, Dawn.
Evening.
Hi, Jackie. Just wanted to say to you, I haven't.
Sorry, sorry, your question.
No. Just wanted to say to you, we've got a rendezvous with the police about the A33, so I'll send you the timings to see if you can make it too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Councillor Porter. It's Matthew.
Yeah.
I think we've got about 30 seconds before we start. The
Yeah.
only member I haven't seen joined is Councillor Todd, I think, at the moment. So,
Right.
but I think apart from Councillor, I'll try and make some inquiries as to sort of see if I can call him into the meeting.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Okay, Matthew.
Yeah, I've tried calling Councillor Todd into the meeting, but he's not responded yet. I don't know if we want to make a start and then I can continue doing that. Oh, I think he's with us now.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Literally looks like he's just dashed in a coat.
No,
Yeah, no, I
think-
thought it was at home. I thought it was in the office, so I suddenly realised at about 10 to. So I apologise.
It's all right. No problem. We haven't started yet. Okay. Matthew, can you put the recording on then, please?
Yeah, that's started, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much indeed. So please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of the Local Plan Advisory Group on Wednesday, the 8th of March 2023, and the time is 6 p.m. Please excuse my rather rough voice. My name is Councillor Porter, Chairperson of the committee, and I'm afraid I'm suffering from a cold at the moment. Councillors are reminded that although this meeting is being held remotely, they're regarded as being present in the meeting of the council, and we're asking you to observe the normal rules of behaviour. And please can I ask everyone present in this virtual meeting that your microphones remain off and your cameras turned off too while you're not addressing the meeting, as this will reduce the background noise and avoid any unintentional disturbances. The meeting is being recorded, live streamed, and will be available on the council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available, and advice on how to turn this on is set out on our website. Please can I ask the Democratic Service Officer, who's Matthew Watson, to undertake a roll call of members of the committee to confirm everyone who's present at the meeting, please. Matthew, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just do a very quick roll call. Councillor Porter, I've obviously seen and heard. Councillor Lerney.
Present. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. Councillor Todd, I've seen and heard. Councillor Edwards.
Present.
Yes, I'm present. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Horrell, I've seen and heard earlier on. And finally, Councillor Reid.
Yes, here and present.
Thank you very
Good
much, Councillor Reid. Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Chair, just before I hand back, we've got a number of officers on the call.
Yeah.
We've got Dawn Adey, Strategic Director, and a number of officers from the planning and built environment teams. And I think that concludes the roll call. Thank you, Chair.
Well, in fact, we have not just a few officers, we have a lot, I think. We've got Adrian Fox, who's the Strategic Planning Manager, Steve Opacek, Jill Lee, Bethany, Toby Ayling, Joan, and I think Rosie on the call. I think that's probably everybody, but is there anybody else? So it would be helpful as you talk the first time just to introduce yourself, so it puts it in context for the members of the public. Thank you. So on to disclosures of interest. Does anybody have a disclosure of interest? I do first. I have a non-pecuniary interest, non-prejudicial interest, because I'm also a county councillor. Would anybody else like to express disclosure of interest?
Yeah, I have a personal non-prejudicial interest as a member of County Council. I'm also the council's representative on the Partnership for South Hampshire.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you. We normally have public participation at this point, but none was registered. We have had a letter from Lichfields, which you will have all received, and I thought we'd bring that up in the questions a little later on. I know Councillor Horrell has one relating to that as well. Is everybody happy about that? Not heard anything.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. And there aren't any non-LPAG members registered for tonight's meeting either. So we'll go straight on to the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 9th of March 2022. And what a long time ago, which is why we think we should have another meeting tonight. Was everybody content with the minutes of the previous meeting?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, so
Agreed.
now we go on to the local plan update, which is the Reg 18 consultation. And this is a presentation by Adrian Fox and his team. I will leave him to go into the detail, but I will switch my camera off as well at this point. So Adrian, over to you. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to you on a rather cold and wet and horrible night. I do want to start on a very positive note, which is to thank everybody, not only on this call, but people that are not on this call, about helping us out with the Reg 18 local plan consultation. That's obviously the parish and town councils, councillors, ward members, local groups and organisations, because without their help and support, we couldn't have done what we achieved. So I'd like to start on a very positive note and say thank you very much for everybody's help in getting involved and rolling their sleeves up with the Reg 18 local plan consultation. So I'm going to share with you a presentation and talk you through, and then I'm more than happy to take questions from you. So can I just confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, you can see that, Adrian.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you. And let's just click it from the beginning. Okay, so just to kind of recap where we are in the process. So we did obviously the strategic issues and priorities consultation. We analysed those comments. We took them to the series of LPAG meetings, and from that we drafted the plan. And the key stage where we're at was we were consulting on the draft plan, the draft regulation 18 plan. The next stage, as you see, is to produce the Reg 19 local plan. And it's very important to stress that this is the plan, the Reg 19 plan, is the plan that we want as a city council to go to the examination. So everything's got to be lined up. All the ducks have got to be in a row, so to speak. All the evidence base has got to be completed, because that is the plan that the local plan inspector will be inspecting. We will be obviously consulting on that for a period of 6 weeks. but the procedure is different, that we have to group together and see if there's any showstoppers and bundle those kind of representations together to the planning inspectorate. So it's a slightly different stage. Okay. So what we wanted to do, and it was very important to not rest on our laurels, to review all of the things that we did in the SIP consultation and to test whether or not they worked or didn't work and what could we improve. Now, clearly, we did the SIP consultation during the national lockdown, so there were obviously other opportunities because we weren't in a national lockdown to do things differently. We took a decision to basically kind of expand our radio and press coverage of the local plan consultation. The radio coverage I'll come on to in a minute, and as with the press, but basically we also held a number of drop-in events, which I know a number of people on this call tonight attended, and thank you for that. And we did 2 specialised online events. We also wanted to reach out to the younger audience, so we had lunchtime drop-in sessions at Sparshot College, University of Winchester and the Peter Symonds College. And that was really good to actually get out and basically talk to younger people about the local plan, because the local plan obviously goes to the period 2039. Now, the great news is the number of respondents to this public consultation was even higher than the SIP public consultation. And I'm proud of that, obviously what we managed to achieve, and I'll come on to the numbers in a minute. So just to kind of recap, the local plan is divided up into a number of topics, and those are the topics there. But obviously it's really important to read the local plan as a whole, because obviously there are policies that overlap and obviously need to be read in conjunction with other policies. So what did we do? We looked at the consultation strategy, and we had a series of kind of brainstorming events where we went through various things that we wanted to do. And hopefully this kind of spider diagram captures what we actually did. Now, obviously, it was different to the SIP consultation, because in the SIP consultation, we were kind of testing ideas, asking for people's kind of views on different things. We did word clouds and things like that. Whereas this time we were actually consulting on draft policies. So the headline figure is that we had 3,433 written responses. Now, it's really important to stress that there's actually more responses than that. And what I mean by that is that I've looked at, for example, the carbon neutrality topic. I'm looking at one particular policy, and somebody's made actually 15 individual points against a policy. So there's actually more than 3,438 written comments that my team will be analysing. And I'm sure I'm not alone from my colleagues on the call, where people have not just said one comment, they've made several comments. So the good news is that obviously we did basically work on Facebook in terms of how we can actually reach out to people in terms of organic posts and paid posts. And those are the figures on the screen there. And we had over 7,777, which stated kind of basically either supported, objected, or neither supported or objected. And what I mean by that was how people actually responded to the consultation. And bear in mind, what we did was we did a really good push on citizen space, and I'd like to thank everybody to kind of help us with that, about how we actually got people to respond to the consultation, which greatly assisted us and my team, because obviously by entering the comments directly into citizen space meant that we didn't have to do it, and we could be accurate in terms of where people wanted the comments done. And there were 398 people that actually watched the video which we produced, and Beth did a sterling job of that, and from my team, on how to actually enter your comments on citizen space. So that was really worthwhile doing. So this pie chart kind of breaks down in terms of Facebook, which obviously is paid advertising, in terms of our reach. And it's really important to obviously reach out to the younger audience via these kind of mechanisms. And you can see there that basically we did really well with obviously the younger age groups, they're 22 and 21%. In terms of the radio advertising, we really wanted to do more with the radio advertising, and you can see there that it was very targeted in terms of what we did. It was very sophisticated. I hadn't realised that you could actually do it by postcode. You could target kind of your reader, your listener kind of reach, and we obviously did it 6 times per day, every 3 hours, and every day of the week. And the digital campaign impressions which we got from the digital people that we work with were 250,000 people. So that's really impressive in terms of obviously reaching out. We also reached out via the Winchester radio station as well. And obviously people are driving to work, they're listening to the radio when they're working at home. So hopefully that was a really positive thing that we did in terms of reaching out to the greatest people. Oops, there we go. And there's the campaign. Let's go to the next one. You don't want to listen to the radio advert. So we also did paid advertising in newspapers. So obviously we did a statutory ad. We did basically newspaper adverts at the beginning, the middle and the end of the consultation in the newspapers, which are listed on the left-hand side. The newspaper adverts could be seen obviously in a hard form and on digital form. And they're kind of a selection of obviously the various publicity that we had in the newspaper. We also wanted to get the message out there, so we produced some script in terms of what parish councils could use in their local parish council magazines, and a lot of parish councils actually took us up on that, which was great. So there was a consistent message that got out to the local community. And that was really important in terms of newsletters and notices and articles to kind of get the maximum reach out there. So thank you for everybody that helped us kind of do that. In terms of posters, great believer in obviously posters. They were displayed in and around the district, 507 of them. They appeared basically from everywhere, from the car parks to parish and town council notice boards to the main reception. They were at university, colleges, bus stops, libraries, car parks, gyms and leisure centres. So we tried to get the maximum coverage that we can, and we had a great deal of support from other people in the council to actually get that message out. And the posters themselves had a QR code that took you directly to the citizen-based consultation. So how else did we get the message out there? Well, we were very keen in terms of obviously how can we reach out. We updated the local plan website, did a lot of work on basically receiving the feedback that we got. How could we make that more user friendly? How could we make it easy to understand? Did a lot of work with the digital company on terms of mobile phone coverage, in terms of how can you read the documents on the mobile phone. And that was really important. And the local plan website, if you haven't been on it, I'd really encourage you to go on to it, because we put a lot of work into that, and that will obviously go through to the local plan examination. It's very important to stress that gypsies and travellers are an important part of our community, but they're also hard to reach. So we appointed Opinion Research to reach out to contact these communities, and they did the gypsies and traveller accommodation needs assessment. And what we did was we encouraged the gypsy and traveller community to approach ORS, and we've got some feedback just recently from them about the people that they've engaged with. We also produced an easy to read guide of the draft local plan, recognising that it can be seen as a complex document, and that went down very good in terms of obviously the disability and hard to reach groups. And in order to reach obviously the younger people, we did obviously the social media advertising and the lunchtime pop-up events that I've just mentioned. In terms of the live events, we planned 2 live events during the consultation. One was raising the bar on design, and one was setting the standard for net zero carbon. We had a very good turnout to those events and some really good questions on those events. And you can see there the statistics on the right-hand side. And those events are really useful because we did those over a lunchtime, and we got really good coverage in terms of the people that attended to those events. Now, the fortunate thing was we weren't in a national lockdown, so we were able to do drop-in sessions at various locations across the district, and the statistics for the number of attendees are on the right-hand side. Sometimes it's a little bit disappointing because obviously the turnout for those, but obviously we publicised them, we did as much as we can, we had the support of the parish councils in the various venues that we attended, and we tried to make them at different times of the day and in accessible locations. But we did our best in terms of obviously geographical coverage and how we can publicise that. And that's a kind of bar chart of obviously the number of people that actually attended the event. Sometimes I must admit, particularly at the Bishops Waltham event, it was very difficult to keep track of the actual number of people actually coming through the door to actually obviously keep track of that. But we did over 37 hours as a team on face-to-face consultations as part of this consultation. We also attended and did presentations at a number of different meetings and events to try and raise the profile of the local plan, and those are outlined in the kind of chart below. And they were really useful to kind of reach out to them and say to them, how can they help us to kind of further publicise and obviously maximise the engagement to this public consultation. Now, in terms of obviously the raw stats, and these are only raw stats that I'm going to go into now. So they are kind of what the Citizen Space has kind of put out the other end. And like I say, in some cases, numerous comments are made. So for example, if I take policy SP1, we got 84 comments. But within that 84, I'm sure that there's a lot more than that. There could actually be double that in terms of the number of comments that people have made. And obviously we've got to go through these individually and obviously provide an answer to the representation, and obviously see, more importantly, whether or not we need to change the policy. So I won't go through these in detail, but you can kind of see this kind of stats. There were some kind of policies that generated a lot of interest. Particularly, we had what's called strategic policies. So they are usually the first policy in the topic. So for example, if I take policy CN1, that was a strategic policy. A lot of people tended to put their comments against the strategic policy. And we also obviously had the LETI energy standards that created a lot of comments on this particular topic. And there was a kind of real mix of views on that kind of LETI energy standards, from people basically saying we support it, to people saying no, you shouldn't go that far, to people saying yes, you should actually go further. So there's a real kind of divergence of comments, and we've got to go through all of those individually and obviously come to a recommendation. Again, I think this kind of in the design high quality places and living well topic again highlights that a lot of comments went towards the strategic policy DN1, and obviously the next one is obviously about probably the brownfield land comments, which obviously generated a lot of comments themselves. But like I say, we need to go through all of these comments in detail. So this is purely raw data. Again, very much duplicated with the sustainable transport and active transport. A lot of people put the comments against obviously the high level strategic policy T1, 88 comments, and obviously the parking standards for new development generated a lot of comments as well. And in terms of obviously the one of the larger topics in the local plan, the kind of biodiversity and natural environment generated a lot of comments. You can see there on the right hand side, 564, but I'm sure there's literally a lot more comments from that. I know, for example, Natural England have given us very detailed comments on that particular topic. And again, in terms of the historic environment, again, the strategic policy coming out the top in terms of number of comments. We had very detailed comments from Historic England on that, and obviously lesser comments on some of the other kind of policies themselves. Again, unsurprisingly, in terms of obviously the housing provision, policy H1, which obviously set our strategy for how we're going to distribute kind of housing across the district, generated a lot of comments, particularly from obviously, as one would expect, from the house builders and the members of the public. And then obviously there were specific comments obviously on for sites that obviously we allocated for development. Again, similar picture with the vibrant economy, a lot of comments under the strategic policy E1 and the kind of town centre uses, which obviously is obviously on a lot of people's minds in terms of obviously the future of the town centres. Again, it returns to the Winchester allocations, a lot of comments on various sites. For example, St Peter's car park is obviously jumping out, land west of Courtney Road is jumping out, 108. Now, obviously, it goes without saying, just like a planning application, it is the quality of the comments that counts, not necessarily the number of comments. It's have what comments they actually make against, obviously, a policy. And again, kind of comments on Waterlooville and Newlands. And unsurprisingly, I guess, because of the turnout at Bishop Waterman event, a lot of people commented on the Rarebridge Lane site, and that was obviously very apparent at the Bishop's Waltham drop-in event. In terms of obviously New Horsford, they are preparing their own neighbourhood plan, so obviously fewer responses there, and obviously those allocations are obviously being rolled forward to an existing local plan. And again, in terms of Coldham Common, kind of just a snapshot of obviously the policies that generated the most amount of comments. Kingsworthy, again, the kind of brownfield site K1 and the land adjacent to the Castle Horse Junction generated obviously comments. We had obviously policies about kind of Winchester Road housing and open space allocation, and those generated these comments. And in terms of the rest of the kind of district, this is a breakdown of the kind of comments that we got on those particular sites. We also received comments on the evidence base, which we need to go through in detail, and that's kind of a quick kind of appraisal of the comments. The settlement hierarchy obviously has been the subject of numerous conversations, and the integrated impact assessment and the findings from that. So that's a kind of snapshot of that. So we'll be going through all those comments. Now, in terms of nutrients, we've got obviously a new issue with phosphates, which the local plan needs to address, as well as nitrates. And we've got a river effluent catchment area, and this plan is basically showing where the kind of allocations fall within that catchment area. And I'll come on to more in a minute about what we're doing in order to address that. So we are working with PUSH, Simon Kennedy and others to identify a nutrient budget for the local plan and solutions to how we can address that issue before we can proceed to the Regulation 19 stage. Now, it is important to stress that we will be kind of approaching this in a number of different strands. That is obviously from looking at sites that can obviously deal with nutrient neutrality. We are looking at our own Winchester District pumping stations in terms of how they can be upgraded. We're also looking at the possibility of obviously retrofitting council properties to obviously reduce obviously the amount of water that obviously is disposed of. And we're looking at other possibilities, including septic tanks and things like that. So this work is very much ongoing, and we're also going to be shortly contacting the site promoters of the sites in the Reg 18 local plan, asking them to demonstrate how they think they're going to address this issue, because it is a joint issue. But the key message is it's very clear that it's going to be a combination of measures to address phosphorus and nitrates, and it is more complicated than nitrates itself. And kind of to conclude, in between this, the government has obviously consulted on proposed changes to the NPPF. The consultation closed on the 2nd of March. A copy of our response, which was agreed with Councillor Porter and the Cabinet, is available on our internet. So if you go under local plan review and you go under government consultation, there is a copy of our response there. There was 57 questions that we had to go through, so it did take a lot of my time and other members of the team's time to go through it. And the key point that I will stress is that housing still needs to be established through the standard methodology as the starting point. But in exceptional cases relating to the character area, it might justify a different approach. Now, there's been a lot of stuff in the publicity and the press linked in on this issue, but obviously the starting point is still the standard methodology. I'm going to finish there, Councillor Porter, and more than happy to take any questions. Oh, you're on mute there, Councillor Porter.
Okay, sorry. Thank you very much. I think I'd have learned by now, wouldn't you? Thank you. Very comprehensive description of the work that you did and the reaction of the public to that. That's really helpful. Thank you. Now, in terms of questions, if anybody's got a question they want to raise, Michael's just raised his hand, but it may be helpful if you use the hand raise function, and I can do it, make sure everybody's taken in order. But Michael, you're certainly quickest off the mark.
Thank you, Jackie. It's just a quickie. It's last night we had a meeting of the West Waterlooville Forum, and what came up there, which I wasn't aware of, was the fact that Havant Borough Council are actually on their Reg 19 already. How is ours going to butt up to the Reg 19 being prepared by Havant Borough Council? Because we have, as you spoke earlier, the overlap situation as far as the West Waterlooville major development area is concerned.
I'm going to leave that to Adrian because he's been liaising with all of the different local plans right round the edge of our district.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Reid. Yeah, that's very true. We are speaking to all of our neighbours, if I put it that way, about where they are in the process, obviously how the plans can obviously overlap, and obviously where there are common issues. We will be producing what's called Statement of Common Grounds, and they need to be agreed before we go to the Reg 19 stage with our neighbours to agree cross-boundary issues. So any issues that affect cross-boundary issues will be picked up in those Statement of Common Grounds. And those Statement of Common Grounds are essential parts of the meeting our duty to cooperate, which is obviously a day one examination test of obviously how we are engaging with our neighbours. But we are working very closely with them in terms of obviously what they're doing, how they're promoting allocations. So we are regularly speaking to our neighbours about various issues.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you for the update.
Thank you. Councillor Horrell, you had a question, I think.
Thank you, Jackie. Yes, it related to the letter that we all received from Lichfields, and I thought it would be really helpful for the LPAG to this evening for Adrian to just clarify the detail of our exact housing numbers, because you've reiterated this evening, Adrian, that we're using the standard methodology still, of all of our housing numbers, because the Lichfield letter has three matters, but matter A was unmet housing need, and it would just be, I think, helpful to us all for you to clarify our numbers so that we all understand the basis on which we're currently moving from Reg 18 to 19. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Yeah, at this moment in time, we are still using obviously the figures that were in the Reg 18 local plan. And in that respect, obviously, we still have the buffer of 1,450, which obviously is set aside for push and any changes to the standard methodology. We will know probably this month, towards the end of the month, if there are changes to the standard methodology. And we are actively working with Push in terms of obviously the Push joint strategy, in terms of obviously how we can obviously meet the Push unmet need. Now at this stage we still haven't got kind of separate allowance for Push, because obviously we put them into the 1,450 figure. And we are obviously actively talking to our colleagues in the South Downs National Park, and it was subject to a question recently about, obviously we've assumed 500 dwellings, and that I've responded in a council question recently to how that 500 dwellings is obviously calculated, and again that will form part of a statement of common ground. And we are in active discussions with obviously the DOI regarding Sir John Moore Barracks, and obviously still assuming 900 dwellings for that site. They are assuring us that the site will be available by 2026, and we're entering into various planning performance agreements and various meetings throughout the year, and hopefully trying to engage much better with ward members and obviously the parish council about the delivery of that site. Now, what we haven't done is look at the representations that we've received on the various allocations, and obviously what issues people have brought up, and whether or not there are substantial issues to obviously change our view on the different sites. We haven't got anywhere near looking at those sites yet. We're concentrating on the topics at the moment. So all I can assure you is at the moment, obviously the housing figures that we're working towards are those that contain in the Reg 18 local plan. And obviously we will be working through the representations to see if there are any changes or things that we need to do to address obviously the concerns, or whether or not a site has received substantial objection, which obviously would mean that obviously that we would need to perhaps change our approach to it. But obviously it's not the quantity of objections, it's the quality of the objection and what people are actually raising. So for example, if a landowner suddenly changes their mind and withdraws the site, that is a substantial issue that obviously we'd need to take into account. Thank you.
Are you content with that, Councillor Horrell?
Chair, if I may, just to clarify, when will push, because there is a debate clearly about the unmet need in the Partnership for South Hampshire, and obviously we have representation with officers and members at that meeting. When will those numbers be clarified as to the requirement for that body, as it were, that then would feed in? Because my question really is, does the Lichfield letter at any point make our current assumptions on the Reg 18 unsound and therefore make the plan vulnerable? Thank you, Jackie.
We have discussed the unmet need right across push, and I was just about to say, Councillor Todd has signed a letter along with other district leaders. He might like to just talk about that and just strengthen that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's helpful to have officers' view first. I mean, there have been meetings where I think it was myself and the chief executive, and actually I think Adrian was there as well. There's some limit to what.
Can I leave it to the officer first then?
Officer first, I think.
Thank you. All I can say is those discussions in terms of what that unmet need is still ongoing, and I don't have a timetable in terms of when push is going to kind of reach an agreement on a joint strategy, if they can reach agreement on joint strategy. I don't have a timetable for that. All I can say is those discussions are still ongoing in terms of what that push unmet need is. And obviously how local authorities are intending to meet that unmet need, and that work is still ongoing at the moment. But I'll defer to Councillor Todd if he wants to add anything else.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that a core assumption of the work is that the push's housing need will be met within the push area. And that, for example, means, it doesn't mean all of the Winchester district is being looked at.
Yes.
So the idea is, sorry?
So, Chair, just for clarity, I remember in my day we took part of the Winchester district out of the push area, and so just so that everyone's aware, there is only part of the Winchester district in the assumptions, just so that we're all clear about that. That's correct still, isn't it, Jackie?
Yes, it is. And Adrian's also.
So yeah, so the work of the push work on housing is done on a push area only basis.
And the areas of search are only in that area, only in that.
And the areas of search are only within push.
That very clear? Is that clear, Caroline? Yeah.
It is. Thank you, Jackie. Just in terms of the timetable you've shared this evening, I think Adrian had a chart that had Reg 19 in November, if I'm correct. Yet we don't have a timetable from push. What is our backup plan then if that is not resolved, if we need to be meeting other deadlines? Thank you.
Adrian, if you got an answer to that one, please.
Yeah, all I can say is one of my neighbours, Fareham, obviously went to a local planning examination, and they obviously had an allowance for push, and the inspector actually agreed with that and said that's the best you can do, because obviously the strategy hasn't moved forward at the pace that wants. So obviously that is the fallback situation, that we will go to examination with our buffer and just say, well, you know, this is what our assumptions are, and obviously the joint strategy hasn't moved as fast as we'd hoped, but that's the situation where we could be at. And Fareham, obviously the local planning inspector, accepted that position and accepted obviously the 900 dwellings that were put forward by Fareham at the local planning examination as an appropriate figure.
And that's, I think, where we will be at that point. We'll be able to make that same statement, because I don't see that urgency to get that agreement done between everybody. And certainly that figure seems to vary. And the conversation is complicated by that recent NPPF consultation, I think, because it still adds uncertainty to the picture rather than certainty to the picture, which is equally frustrating. Councillor Evans.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Adrian, a very impressive stats and consultation details, so congratulations to you and the team on those. What was the rationale behind actually going to places out in the district? Because I noticed that although you've got comments from Alresford, Denmead and Wickham, you didn't actually go there.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Evans. I think it's obviously being realistic about what we couldn't go to everywhere in the district, so we tried to get a good geographical spread across the district. I think the main benefit, and having attended, I think I attended 4 out of the 6, was that we actually managed to talk to people about it, and a lot of people wanted to know just a bit more information. So, for example, if I take the Bishop's Waltham event, we had a lot of discussion there about the access, about the trees, about things like that. And actually having that conversation, I think, is really valuable in terms of obviously people. We said obviously it didn't matter where you lived, you could come to any of the drop-in events because the same information was there. And we were willing to talk to people about obviously the local plan, what went on, what the next stages was. We talked to people about how they could submit their comments. So I thought they were actually invaluable in terms of obviously talking to people about the local plan process, which is complicated, let's be truthful. So I think that is valuable, but the main message was it didn't need to, it didn't need to be in Bishop's Waltham. You could come to a Bishop's Waltham event and you could want to talk about a comment in Winchester, and we'd talk to you about those sites and give you as much information as we can. And it's also just being realistic how much officer time it took to organise those, and also the expense, because they do come with an expense, and I was quite shocked actually how much they did actually cost. So it's just trying to get that geographical coverage across the district, which is quite challenging with obviously the long kind of thin district we've got, trying to get venues in appropriate places. So hopefully it was valuable, but I know a number of councillors on the call attended those drop-in events. So.
Oh, yes, I think it was valuable, but looking at the map, because I do have the map in front of me, it's very central and to the left of the district based. And yeah, people could have gone to Bishop's Waltham, which is the only one in the middle. But I think I'm just regretting that you didn't come further to the east of the district. But I don't want that to mar my congratulations to you on the team's effort in going out. But I think choosing the larger centres of population might have been a good starting point.
I think if I could just add there, Councillor, we're always open to feedback about how we can improve things, and that's I hopefully stressed at the beginning, was we want to basically do things better. Every time we do a consultation, we want to do things better. So if there were places that you thought actually it would be really good to think, please just email us, and then we can take those points on board as part of the next consultation. But obviously we've got to be realistic about how much time it takes with officers to actually get out there and do it, because obviously doing the 6 drop-in events, the 3 drop-in events at lunchtime, plus the presentations of the other event, took an awful lot of my team's time. And obviously we still have a kind of day job that we have to do to support other departments. So it is a balance about how much time we can actually get out there. And you do need at least 3 people, officers out there. And I know Councillor Porter kind of came to all of them, but you do need, you know, to deal with the numbers, you need at least 3 to 4 people, you know, and my team's not massive. But yeah, please, if you've got suggestions about other venues, please just email me and we can take that on board as part of the Reg 19.
Well, I have Alresford, Wickham and Denmead. They perhaps should have been included, but yeah, I take on board what you're saying.
Can I add in a little bit of something here, please? Because both Alresford and Denmead are doing their own neighbourhood plans. So they are very much in control of their own way, and they are fully consulting with their own areas anyway. Wickham, I agree, but we have had conversations about the housing need in Wickham anyway. And of course, we only went to the district planning authorities areas because the South Downs National Park has its own local plan process, which they paused, can I say, during this process. So the reason we went to those places was because there were identified issues, but also there was public transport and a population centre. And I agree, Wickham was probably the one we missed out on, but I'm just explaining why we didn't go to Denmead and to Alresford. So I hope that helps. But all, as Adrian said, nothing is, we don't ever assume anything is perfect, and we're always willing to take comments for next time. So thank you very much indeed. Has anybody else got any other comments or any questions? Caroline, Councillor Horrell.
Thank you. We've obviously talked in a little more detail this evening about push, and you've mentioned the 500 for South Downs National Park, Adrian, but we know they've had some resource issues and the like on other projects, and there's a sort of a bit of a black hole. The 500 is a very significant number in the total, and yet we don't have visibility. We know there was a call for sites as we were going through our plan from the South Downs National Park. But where are we? Where is that information coming and being fed back to us so that we can understand that? Because we have wards which have a foot in both camps, as it were, in the Winchester and the South Downs, and it would be good to understand the current status of those conversations and the expectations, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Porter. I'd probably refer you to the recent council question on this, because there's quite a detailed breakdown I provided in terms of the 500. And it is important to stress that it's not 500 as such, because there are already sites that have been granted planning permission that we've managed to count and agree with the National Park. So I haven't got that exact figure to hand, but I thought from memory it was about 260 have already got planning permission, so we can count that off the 500. But in the council recent question, I provided a detailed response to that. And also in terms of looking back to what actually happened during the last local plan and the number of dwellings that were actually developed during the last local plan. And again, the council question responds to that, and I believe from memory it was about 12 a year or something like that. But like I say, please refer to the council question. We can always share that again, because I put a very detailed response in terms of how that 500 dwellings is calculated. And yes, we are in dialogue with them, but we do think that's a reasonable figure to assume. And again, that would form part of our statement of common ground with the National Park Authority. So we're not over-egging it in terms of obviously what development could come forward in the park. It's very much based on a similar kind of basis to what we assumed before, and the park are very happy with that. They've obviously done a call for sites. They have obviously had a few issues with obviously the local plan manager leaving, but now obviously they've recruited for that position, and I think they will be obviously pressing ahead, and no doubt there are a number of sites being put forward in their call for sites, but I'm confident that that figure is achievable because it's very similar to what's happened previously. Thank you.
Okay, can I just ask you to rehearse the challenge of phosphates for the local plan, please? We obviously know that when we started this process, really phosphates were not such an issue, but nitrates were, and we were dealing really well with those. But actually over this last year, it's been a real challenge. And I wondered if you'd like to talk about how we're tackling that for this local plan.
Well, I think it all comes back to one of the advantages of being in Push is that we have the advice and the professional kind of advice of Simon Kennedy and his team, which has been boosted recently by government funding. And Simon, I think, is probably one of the most knowledgeable persons in the country on nitrates and phosphates. He's in active discussions with a number of landowners and developers, and also he's got his ear to the ground in terms of what else is happening across the country. And he has regular meetings with the Department of Levelling Up in terms of obviously what's going on. He's produced some work at the moment, and we need to discuss that with RKC in terms of obviously how the local plan can address obviously phosphorus in the local plan. And as I said in the presentation, it is through a combination of measures that we are taking this forward. There is no one single kind of holy grail answer to this. It will be cracked through a series of different initiatives, and that work is ongoing at the moment to make sure that comes into fruition. But like I say, it is in hand. We are doing a lot of work with Simon Kennedy and his team in terms of what can happen. And also we're obviously mindful of what happened at the Fareham examination and what they obviously had to demonstrate to the inspector, because obviously found that their local plan sound. So it is in hand. It is more complicated than nitrates, but we came to a good answer with nitrates and came to a solution, and there will be a solution to phosphates, but it will be through a combination of measures.
Thank you very much indeed. And the other question that was raised in the paper that came to us was about St John Moore Barracks, and I would just like to take it out of the specifics of St John Moore Barracks, but talk about in the plan about the phasing that we talked about and that we proposed. Brownfield first, Greenfield second. I presume that that's still relevant for this conversation, tied up with particularly what we've just been talking about, the nutrient neutrality.
Yes, it is very much an underlying plank of obviously the Reg 18 local plan was to obviously prioritise the brownfield sites over the greenfield sites. And that's still basically our intention in terms of obviously moving forward to the Reg 19 local plan. Clearly, a number of those brownfield sites are in Winchester City Council's ownership, and we're in active discussions about obviously how we can move those sites forward. And the greenfield sites would be phased after 2030 to obviously enable a kind of more smoother trajectory and land supply across the district. And also it helps us in terms of obviously coming to answers, and it's been raised also about the Letchedy energy standards, but obviously by that time 2030 there will be more assessors. It will be more common to obviously do different ways of dealing with things, so I think it's advantageous from that perspective as well.
Yes, I think it's useful to mention that we also met with the house builders, didn't we, as a meeting, and that was a useful one as part of this consultation process. So, and I was going to just ask as well about young people. You went to 3 venues for young people. Did you glean anything from those that was specifically important that you felt addressed something that we hadn't done in previous times?
I think the main thing was trying to, I hate to kind of say this, but kind of excite local young people about the local plan, that it is important for them, and how obviously how and why it's important to them. And clearly affordability and home ownership is obviously a key issue for them, which obviously hopefully we're addressing through the local plan. But it is obviously that I would say is the key thing. And obviously habits are changing in terms of obviously car ownership, in terms of younger people, perhaps not necessarily thinking, oh, I must learn to drive, I need a car, etc., or perhaps I need to obviously perhaps look at borrowing cars, etc. So there is a changing kind of dynamic in terms of the younger people. But I think in terms of affordability, and home ownership. They were obviously the critical things, and obviously employment as well, which hopefully will be addressed through other allocations such as Bushfield Camp and things like that.
Thank you. So if anybody has got any other questions? No? Okay. Well, I just wanted to, Caroline, Councillor Horrell.
Sorry, Chair, there's such a lot in here.
All right.
Don't want to miss the opportunity with everyone here. If I could ask Adrian and the team, the premise in the Lichfield document is if Sir John Moore were not to progress, or certainly not at the speed in which we have put it into the plan, and although we have pushed it back to a later stage than we had originally started, I asked the question the other day of the leader in terms of the backup plan, because Sir John Moore is our #1 development site and offering the highest number of houses in this plan, in this iteration. And if there's any doubt over that, that obviously gives organisations like Lichfields the opportunity to question the validity of our plan. Is there anything further that we can do as an authority to reassure all of us that the Sir John Moore site is progressing, even though we haven't quite nailed the detail of that, and that we can be assured that the assumptions we've made in our housing numbers then are going to be able to be fulfilled? Thank you.
I'll pass that to you, Adrian.
Yeah, I think Dawn Adie's got her hand up actually, so perhaps I'll let her speak first, and then I'm happy to add.
Oh yes, you're right. You're right.
Thank you.
Thank
you, and good evening, members. So we've clearly been working with Sir John Moore around their application, and Adrian's part of that very important team, and we meet with the team on at least a fortnightly basis to talk about their application and how they're progressing with developing the site. What I have been asked for recently and are about to arrange is some consultation with cabinet members and then members wider, so that they can go to consultation this summer. So I just wanted to assure you that those sorts of things are really assuring us that they are moving this forwards.
Yeah, thank you. And part of the moving it was because we don't want everything turning up on our doorstep at once. We want to phase it through the whole of the time. Otherwise we end up with a huge amount actually getting going very quickly and then having this gap. So I think it was encouraging that Adrian took that to Department of Levelling Up and they agreed that principle. So that was helpful. Anything else, anybody? No? Okay. Can I just say thank you as well to the team who worked tirelessly through the 6 weeks, and including going out to visit sites. And as you said, Adrian, Bishop's Waltham was particularly busy, Kingsworthy was particularly quiet, but actually to all those parishes as well that had done some preparation for those events, either because they consulted so there wasn't any contention when it came to the day, or because there was a lot to talk about. So thank you very much to the team and to the parishes. I think that's probably all for now. We are expecting, would you want to outline what happens next, Adrian?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Porter. So I think really we're rolling our sleeves up is the way I'd put it, and we're going through the reps literally one by one and the topics. In terms of how long that's going to take, I can't give you a definitive timetable at the moment because obviously we are just in the initial stages of going through the topics, and some of the obviously comments are fairly straightforward. People supported it, that's great. Some are more bit detailed, and I'll put my hand up, they require kind of a bit of head scratching to work out whether or not we agree or don't agree with it, but each comment will be responded to, and obviously we will be taking that full response back through obviously the normal channels that we've got to obviously get towards the Reg 19 local plan. We're also obviously progressing part of the evidence base. It's important to mention that tonight. So we're undertaking an employment and retail study at the moment, because we appreciate that the retail study was completed just before lockdown. So we're updating that at the moment. So there will be an update. Toby and Joan from my team are leading on that, in terms of obviously what the findings are from the employment and town centre study. We're also commissioning some work with Hampshire County Council in terms of their trading arms, in terms of looking at the cumulative impact of the site allocations in the Reg 18 local plan, because obviously that locally has come up in terms of what is the cumulative impact of these developments, and that work will be ongoing once we agree the fee proposal with Hampshire. And like I say, we do need to make sure that we prepare the statement of common grounds, and make sure we check other parts of the evidence base. There has been comments about the student number, so we need to make sure that obviously we are on firm ground with obviously the students, and we will be liaising with the universities about that. And a number of other strands will be going on alongside processing the representations. But at the moment, like I say, we're rolling our sleeves up, getting into the representations and trying to work out obviously whether or not we need any changes to the Reg 18 policies. All of the changes, obviously, once they're agreed, need to go back through the integrated impact assessment and the HRA, and obviously any changes that obviously they identify as well. But I can't stress enough that there's a lot of work to do, and the Reg 19 plan has got to be the plan that we want examined. So we do need a sufficient time to go through that and make sure everything is completed. And there will be things like, for example, the statement of community involvement that needs a kind of light up refresh. There are other things such as the Sheila. There was a number of sites come forward as part of the Reg 18 local plan. So again, we need to pinpoint dates for obviously taking those through cabinet and making sure all of the evidence base is entirely up to date. And obviously we are confident that obviously that is the plan that we want to consult on. And the plan for the Reg 19 local plan obviously needs to be agreed through cabinet, but it needs to be agreed by full council, because it is the plan that you're submitting basically to the local plan examiner. So hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, I think we'll stop there then. Thank you. And thank you very much. Caroline, as I stopped it, your hand went up.
Sorry, I'm not quick enough on the button. Can I just say thank you? Well, it was just to say thank you for tonight. It's been really helpful to have the update, and clearly there's a lot of work going on, so well done to the officer team. But if you can think about sort of keeping LPAG in the loop as to updates as appropriate, but it's been a long time since we met. This has been really helpful this evening, and if we could think about how we manage that over the coming weeks and months without being too onerous to you and the team, Adrian, that would be really kind. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Of course, we had scrutiny between, didn't we? Which was agonisingly long. We've got a echo. Anyway, just to say, it was agonisingly long, but nevertheless, having that scrutiny meant that it looks like we haven't had a year's gap, but there is a programme for this work, and we will keep people updated, perhaps in briefings as well as in LPAGs, I think. So thank you very much for that, Caroline, and thank you very much for everybody else. Good night.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good
Thank you,
night.
Jackie.
Thank you. Good night.
And thank you, Adrian, by the way. I would have
Thank you.
joined in, but I thought Jackie's going to do it. But otherwise, I would have had a go myself to say how grateful we all are for the amazing amount of work you're doing and the leadership you give to the whole team.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Councillor Todd. Thank you. Good night.
Cheers then. Thank you.